Linda sat on her bed, her silk robe slipping off her shoulders. David walked in, wiping his forehead. "Madam, you called?" She walked toward him slowly, her voice soft. "David," she began, her eyes fixed on him, "do you ever feel like there's something missing?" Linda placed her hand on his cheeks, fingers tracing down his jaw. "Don't say no," she begged, her voice barely audible. "Don't deny this, please. My husband ignores me and treats me like a possession. He cares more about his business than he does about me." Took a step closer. "I see the way you look at me. Don't pretend you don't feel it too. Your pencil is what I need. I love how it looks, its length, its size. It's everything I've wanted for so long." David froze, his towel falling a bit as he stared at her in shock. "Madam," he stammered, shifting uncomfortably, "this isn't right. You're my boss's wife. I'll give you a raise." Linda interrupted, stepping closer, her eyes meeting his with a look that stopped his words. "I don't care about right or wrong anymore. I need this. I need you." David backed away, shaking his head. "But madam, what if—" "No buts, David," she cut him off, her voice firm but pleading. "Just say yes, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about anything again. Please subscribe to my channel." The grand ballroom sparkled with golden lights and pretty flowers. The air smelled of roses and lavender. Linda stood in the middle, her beautiful white dress fitting her perfectly, as she smiled for the cameras. This was her dream come true, the one she'd had since she was a little girl. Nicholas, her rich husband, stood next to her, smiling proudly as people congratulated them. As she looked at him, her heart filled with happiness. Nicholas was everything she'd hoped for, rich, handsome, and respectful. After years of bad relationships with men who either cheated or hurt her, she had promised herself she would never settle for less. This time, she had chosen security over passion. Love could grow. She thought their honeymoon in Dubai was amazing, full of fancy presents, beautiful views, and romantic meals. But when they were alone, Linda started to see problems. It began on their wedding night. She was excited and nervous, waiting for Nicholas. But it was over quickly, leaving her feeling empty. At first, she thought she was just tired. But as the days passed, she realized it was a pattern. She never knew that her husband Nicholas has a very small pencil just by 2 inches in length. This one thing made her want more. She wondered why she had agreed to his condition when they were dating that they would not have sex until after marriage. If only I had known, she thought. One night, unable to stay quiet any longer, she turned to him in bed. "Nicholas," she began, her voice shaky but determined. He replied, looking at his phone. "Don't you think we need to talk about us?" He finally looked at her, his eyebrows slightly raised. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard, nervously playing with the blanket. "I mean intimacy. Don't you think it's important? Or is there something you're not telling me? Did you ever find me attractive at all? Do I just look somehow to you? Is there something you're not telling me about your sexuality?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her husband sighed, putting his phone on the nightstand. "Linda," he began. "How dare you question my sexuality? What are you trying to say?" He asked her angrily. "Anyway, intimacy isn't food. We're adults. We don't need to act like teenagers. There's more to marriage than that." His tone was dismissive, and his words hurt. She watched him turn away, pulling the covers up. Linda sat in the dark, her chest tight with frustration and longing. She felt completely rejected. It wasn't just about the physical act, it was the connection, the vulnerability, the feeling of being loved that she craved. But Nicholas didn't seem to understand. Instead, he made things worse by not caring. In the months that followed, she tried everything to bring back their passion. She cooked his favorite meals, wearing only an apron as she served him, hoping for a reaction. He barely looked up from his phone. She wore the sexiest lingerie she could find, standing in front of the mirror as he walked in. His only comment was, "Aren't you cold?" Once, she even put her hands on his chest while he was working, pressing herself against him. "Not now, Linda," he said without even looking at her. Each rejection made her want to try less, dimming her confidence and making her feel invisible and unwanted. The nights became lonelier, the silence between them heavier. She couldn't help but wonder if this was her punishment for rushing into marriage after a series of heartbreaks, or was it because she agreed to his request of no sex before marriage, which he also agreed on before they started. But beneath her growing anger was a deep yearning for love, for connection, for someone who could see her as more than a wife, more than a responsibility. She wanted to feel desired, cherished, alive. She wanted to feel the passion in it. Soon, her desperation would lead her into a temptation she never expected. Linda first started noticing their gardener, David. One sunny afternoon, he was crouched beside one of Nicholas's expensive SUVs, working on it easily. His shirt stuck to his broad chest, wet with sweat that shone in the sun. Every muscle in his arms flexed as he worked, his biceps strong. Unlike Nicholas, who barely noticed her or her beauty, David always greeted her warmly. His deep, pleasant voice had a quiet charm. "Madam, how is everything?" he would ask, his shy smile showing perfect white teeth. That day, Linda looked a little too long. She noticed how his pants sat low on his hips, his athletic body obvious. A warmth she hadn't felt in months stirred within her. Over time, she began to notice other things about him, how attentive he always seemed, quick to do what she asked, and how his presence filled the silent emptiness Nicholas left behind. One afternoon, the gas cylinder knob in the kitchen got stuck. Frustrated, Linda called for David, expecting him to come quickly as usual. When he didn't answer, she walked to his room at the far end of the yard. The sun beat down on her bare shoulders. "David," she called again, knocking on his door. The faint sound of running water came from inside. She realized he was in the shower. The door was slightly open, not locked. Curiosity tempted her, urging her to peek through the keyhole. She hesitated, but her feet moved on their own. She pushed the door open a little to see him through the gap in the bathroom door. Her breath caught. David stood under the shower, his skin glistening as water ran down his strong shoulders and defined chest. But what really caught her eye was his, well, let's just say his impressive physique. It was more than she'd ever expected, unlike anything she'd imagined. A rush of heat went through her, and she quickly backed away, her heart pounding. By the time she got back to the house, her face was flushed and she was sweating. Her thoughts were a mix of guilt and longing. The image of David in the shower, his physique structure, it wasn't just about physical attraction, she longing for something more, something she couldn't quite define. It invaded her dreams, her mind replaying the moment over and over. Soon, she found reasons to talk to him. Their casual chats became a little flirty. Her fingers brushed his hand when she gave him something, her gaze lingering a little too long, just to feel something. One evening, as David carried groceries into the kitchen, Linda decided she couldn't hold back. The tension inside her had reached a breaking point. "David," she said, her voice soft but firm. He turned to her, confused. "Yes, madam." She took a deep breath, stepping closer until they were almost touching. "You," she whispered, her eyes locking with his, "it's what I need." David froze, his eyes wide. "Madam, I don't understand." "I've seen it," she interrupted, her cheeks flushing as she confessed. "That day in your bathroom, I saw it. And it's everything I've been missing." Her voice dropped, trembling with desire. "I need you, David." His gaze went to the floor, his Adam's apple moving as he swallowed hard. "Madam, this is wrong. You are married." She stepped even closer, her hand lightly brushing against his pants. "No one will know. Nicholas doesn't care about me. But you can give me what I've been craving." "Please," she pleaded, cutting him off. Her fingers slid down his chest, lingering near his waist. "You are the only one who can make me feel alive again. Please, I just want you to revive me." David's resolve weakened as her touch ignited something within him. His breath quickened, his body betraying his hesitation. That night, when the house was quiet and the world seemed still, Linda invited him to her room. What began with hesitant touches quickly became an explosion of passion. David was everything Nicholas wasn't: intense, attentive, and eager to please. For the first time in years, Linda felt truly alive, her body trembling with a satisfaction she had long forgotten. As their affair deepened, Linda found herself addicted to the fire David ignited. She knew it was wrong, but every stolen moment with him felt like reclaiming a part of herself she had lost. The affair continued in secret, each encounter more intoxicating than the last. Linda knew she was on dangerous ground, yet she couldn't resist. David became her escape, his touch igniting a fire she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. Their stolen moments, whether in the secluded corners of the house or in the stillness of the night, were filled with raw passion and a growing sense of guilt. Nicholas remained oblivious, his attention consumed by his business and maintaining their social image. He was rarely home, and when he was, his conversations with Linda revolved around appearances, fancy dinners, deals to close, and making sure their marriage looked perfect from the outside. To Linda, it felt like he cared more about his reputation than about her. But behind the scenes, he never paid much attention to his marriage. As time passed, so did the affair between his wife and David, still a secret. Months later, Linda's world changed when she began experiencing nausea and fatigue. Her husband asked her to see the family doctor, confirming what she already suspected: she was pregnant. The news brought a wave of mixed emotions. Was the child Nicholas's or David's? The question haunted her, but she buried her doubts, determined to keep her secret. When she told Nicholas, his reaction was pure joy. "Linda, this is wonderful news," he exclaimed, lifting her up in a rare display of affection. He immediately began making plans, hiring decorators for the nursery and calling friends and family. Nicholas's joy was contagious, and soon the house was buzzing with preparations for the baby. He spared no expense, throwing a lavish baby shower at a 5-star hotel. Guests admired the extravagance, praising Nicholas for his generosity and Linda for her radiant glow. "Finally, I'll be a father," Nicholas said proudly, raising a glass during his speech. "This child is a blessing, proof that hard work and faith pay off. To my beautiful wife Linda, you've given me more than I could ever ask for." Linda smiled, her hands resting on her growing belly, but her heart was heavy with guilt. The applause and congratulations felt hollow, each well-wisher's words like a knife twisting in her chest. She glanced across the room at David, who was overseeing security for the event. Their eyes briefly met, and in that fleeting moment, she saw the same worry she felt. As the pregnancy progressed, Linda struggled to keep her secret hidden. Nicholas's excitement only made her guilt grow, but she reminded herself that she was doing what was necessary to maintain her marriage and her status. 2 years after the twins were born, the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder, spreading like wildfire. Visitors and neighbors couldn't help but comment on the stark difference between the boys. One twin had Nicholas's sharp jawline, fairer complexion, and piercing gaze, a near replica of his father. The other, however, had a richer, darker skin tone, full lips, and a broad nose that unmistakably mirrored David's features. At first, Nicholas dismissed the comments, attributing the differences to genetics. "Twins don't always look alike," he would say dismissively, though the seed of doubt had been planted. But the murmurs persisted. During a casual gathering, one of the neighbors remarked, "It's funny how one of your boys looks just like your gardener, David, don't you think?" The words, spoken half in jest, struck a nerve. That night, Nicholas confronted Linda. His face was set, his eyes dark with suspicion as he closed the bedroom door behind him. "Linda," he began, his voice deceptively calm, "why does one of our sons look so different from the other?" Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. "They're twins, Nicholas," she said. "Not all twins are identical." His gaze bored into hers, unrelenting. "This isn't about them being identical, Linda. People are talking. I'm asking you, why does one of our sons look nothing like me?" She turned away, her hands trembling as she fiddled with the hem of her dress. "Nicholas, you're overthinking this. Genetics can be unpredictable." He cut her off, his voice now low and dangerous. "I want a DNA test tomorrow." Her breath hitched, panic surging through her veins. "A DNA test, Nicholas? Is that even necessary? You are their father." His jaw tightened, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I said tomorrow." Linda nodded weakly, her mind racing with fear. The walls she had carefully built around her secret were beginning to crumble, and she knew there was no escape from the truth. To be continued. Please subscribe for part 2.